Okay, fifth graders, today we are doing Module 4, Lesson 2. Okay, and yesterday 4.1 was kind of a standalone lesson about line plots. And so today's problem of the day does review that. But today's main goal is we're going to talk about how a fraction is really just division. And you might have heard this before. You might have heard like, oh, fraction is just another way to write division. Give me a thumbs up if you've heard that before. And today, I'm going to prove, we're going to work together to prove why that's true. We're not just going to take somebody's word for it, that fraction is division. We're going to show ourselves and prove to ourselves using pictures and numbers and words that it is true. Okay? Good. To begin today's math lesson, we're going to draw pictures to represent division sentences. Okay? I'm going to do the first one for you. It says you have 2, and you want to divide it into 2 parts. So write down 2 divided by 2. What's the whole? 2. Okay. So that means I have 2 units to begin with. And I want to divide it into how many groups? 2 groups. So I can put this one. There's one group. And there's another group. Okay. What's the quotient? How many wholes are in each group? Or how many are in each group? 1. So the quotient is 1. Very good. Now this time, my whole is 1. Okay. And I still want to divide it into 2 groups. So that means I have to cut it in half. And here's one group. And here's another group. Do you guys see that? This time, what's my quotient? How much is in each group? 1/2. Right? 1/2. Okay, good. Now, what about 1 divided by 3? What's my whole? 1. Okay. And I want to divide it into how many equal groups? 3. So I have to cut it into 3 parts because here's one group, 2 groups, and 3 groups. This time, what's my quotient? How much is in each group? 1/3. 1/3, right? Each of these groups has 1/3 of the whole. 1/3 is my quotient. By the way, is another way to write 1 2/2? Do you guys agree? Okay. Based on these 3 numbers that 3 problems we've drawn pictures for and written equations for, what patterns or what do you notice? Go ahead and talk to someone near you. Do you guys notice in our first problem, 2 divided by 2, what's the whole? 2. What's the numerator? 2. Okay. What was the divisor knocking on the door? 2. What was the denominator? 2. Okay. In our next problem, 1 divided by 2, what's the whole? 1. What's the numerator? 1. What's the numerator? 1. Okay. What was the divisor? 2. What's the denominator? 2. So are you guys seeing how your whole always becomes the numerator and the divisor always becomes the denominator? So without drawing a picture, what is the whole in our new problem? 2. So what's going to be the numerator? 2. What's our denominator going to be? 3. So 2 divided by 3, another way to write that is 2/3. We can think of this fraction bar, the middle line, as the division sign. So we can read it as 2 divided by 3. Do you guys see that? Okay. Let's draw a picture to prove it. If I have 2 wholes to begin with, I want to split it into 3 equal groups. Could I put 1 into each equal group like that? No. But if I divide it into 3, each whole into 3, could I put this into the first group and 1 piece into the first group? There's one group. There's a second group. And there's a third group. Do you guys see that? Does the blue group have the same amount as the green group? And does that have the same amount as the yellow group? Yeah. How much does each group get? 1/3. Well, here's 1/3 for the blue group, but here's another third for the blue group. So altogether, how much does the blue group get? 2/3. Here's 1/3 for the green group, but here's another third for the green group. So how many thirds does the green group get? 2/3. Similarly, here's one group for the yellow and 1/3 for the yellow. So how many thirds does the yellow group get altogether? 2/3. And so you can see how much is in each group? 2/3. So our quotient or our answer is 2/3. So we can prove using pictures that a division sentence is really the numerator divided by the denominator. Do you guys see that? I'm going to prove it to you in a second way, too. This is called unit form. Everyone write down the word unit form. We've worked with unit form before. When we rename the units, we can call this called using unit form. So right now, my whole is 3. 3 what's? 3 ones, right? Or 3 wholes. Do you guys agree? Is 3 the same as 3 ones? Okay, if I have 3 ones and I want to divide it by 2, is 3 divisible by 2? Everyone? Is 3 divisible by 2? Fact families? No, right? But I can rename 3 ones. Look, I have 3 ones here. Here's 1, 2, 3. But if I cut each one into half-size pieces, did I change how much I have altogether? No, I still have 3 ones. But I cut them into 6 units. But what are my new units?
Halves.
3 ones is the same amount as 6 halves. Do you guys agree? Right? Yeah. But 6 is divisible by 2. So instead of thinking 3 can't be divided by 2 evenly, 6 can. So what's 6 divided by 2? 3. But then what are my units? Halves. How do I write 3 halves using a fraction? 3 over 2. And so by using unit form, I can rename 3 ones as 6 halves. And I like 6 halves better because it's actually divisible by 2. And when I do 6 halves divided by 2, I can think 6 divided by 2 is 3, and my units is halves. So my answer is 3 halves. Does that make sense? Okay. Using the pictures, it would be the same thing. Here's the first group. They get 1 half, 2 halves, 3 halves. And my second group could get 1 half, 2 halves, and 3 halves. So you need to know how to prove this using pictures and using unit form. Remember, unit form is when you rename the units. What was our old units? Everyone? What is our new units? When we renamed the units from 3 ones to 6 halves, did we change the whole? No. Talk to your partner. Why did we want to rename it then? When we rename the unit from 3 ones to 6 halves, it just makes it easier to divide by 2. Okay, and then we have our answer then. We're going to be using unit form to solve these problems. Our first question is 2 divided by 3. What's our original unit?
2 ones.
2 ones, good. Okay, but we want to rename it. Now, in order to decide what units we want to name it into, we might want halves, we might want thirds, fourths, etc. All you need to do, it's really easy. Here's the trick. You look at the divisor. What is our divisor here? 3. So imagine the pictures that we had to draw. If I'm dividing into 3 groups, how many pieces do I want to cut each whole into? 3. So what is 1 unit? A third. So instead of ones, we know we want our unit to be thirds. 2 ones is the same as how many thirds?
6 thirds.
6 thirds. Good. So I can do 6 thirds divided by 3. What's 6 divided by 3? 2. And then my unit is thirds. So using unit form, I would write it out like this. 2 space THIRDS, right? But in fraction form, I would write it as 2 thirds. Which, I mean, you could have known already. It's 2 over 3 because our numerator is our whole and our denominator is our divisor. But you have to prove it using unit form and or pictures. Okay. If I were to use pictures, I could see that each group would get 1 third and another third, 1 third and another third, 1 third and a second third. So each group gets 2 thirds. Do you see how we proved it in many different ways here? Let's take a look at our next example. What's our whole? 5. And our original units is 5 ones, right? But we don't want that. Okay, we want to rename it. Now, if I look at my divisor, what am I dividing by? 4. So that means I want my units to be fourths. Whatever your divisor is, you want the fraction version of that. Okay, because you're going to be dividing it into 4. So if I have 5 ones, but instead I cut each piece into fourths, how many fourths do I have?
24.
Good. Are you guys noticing? It's 5 times 4 or 2 times 3, whatever, okay? Good. So now our new problem is 20/4 divided by 4. What's 20 divided by 4? 5, okay. And what are my units?
Fourths.
So how do I write that as a fraction? 5 over 4. What do we know about 5 over 4? There's a whole inside. It's really 1 and 1/4. So the answer to this, in its simplest form, is 1 and 1/4. Does that make sense? How can you write these number sentences as a fraction? Well, we just did. 2 divided by 3 is 2/3. 5 divided by 4 is 5. 5 what? 5/4. Very good. And so this proves to you using unit form and using pictures that when you see a division sentence, you can think of it as a fraction. Or when you see a fraction, you can think of it as a division sentence. Make sense?